first was mauled to death by a horde of jaguars. The second blown away in a massive hurricane. The third was burnt in a rain of fire, while the fourth was submerged in a flood of blood. And then there's the fifth one, our world, which is prophesied to be destroyed in a massive earthquake. So goes the legend of the five suns, an important legend amongst the Aztec people. Although the increased diversification of the United States is mainly considered a good thing, it has the negative side effect of diluting and dulling the culture of indigenous America. As people living in America, we should try our best to understand the culture that came before us, so that it may never become forgotten. As a person that's been studying the Aztec civilization since high school, I know a lot about their culture, their daily rituals, their warfare, and I would like to go over one of the more notable aspects of Aztec culture, the human sacrifice. We'll be going over the mythology that forms the basis of the sacrifice, the way they get the sacrifices, and how the ritual itself would have been performed. As previously discussed and detailed further in the Florentine and Duran Codex, journals written by the Spanish after their conquest of the Aztec, and one of the few primary sources we have in regards to Aztec mythology, the world has been through 4 iterations, each ending in disaster, before the 5th one we reached our world. This 5th world only occurred because of the sacrifice of many gods in order to restart the world. Most notably, Quetzalcoatl for stabbing himself in order to resurrect humanity. We see the Aztecs' gratitude for this in their self-sacrifice rituals, in which they stab themselves with a thorn or needle in order to draw out blood like Quetzalcoatl did. But this isn't the only reason, nor the main reason. Huitzilopochtli is the god of war, our current sun, and the main deity that the Aztecs prayed to. His mother was killed by his 400 brothers, the Sasime, and the moon, Coyolxauhqui, and his sister, out of jealousy for his birth. They are constantly fighting, and should Huitzilopochtli ever falter or fail, the stars and the moon would kill Huitzilopochtli before descending upon Earth and killing the rest of us. How does he maintain this strength? He consumes blood, and this would explain the main reason for Aztec sacrifice, in order to ensure that humanity doesn't perish, as well as the abundance of blood sacrifices they would do. Now that we have a basic understanding of the Aztec mythology, it's now time to obtain sacrifice. Most people believe that the Aztecs got their sacrifice from their rapid expansion in the 13th century as prisoners of war, but that's not the most optimal way that they do it. Flower wars are agreements between 2 city-states in the Aztec Empire to fight against each other, not to kill or to take over land, but for getting sacrifices. Soldiers are given blunt weaponry and told to kill as few people as possible, only to pacifying them in order to get sacrifices. Though other reasons such as military training and political intimidation also exist. A Foundation for the Advancement of Mesoamerican Science report, an organization dedicated to studying Mesoamerican culture, details the variety of sacrifice, with at least 15% of the sacrifices being women, while 20% of the sacrifices are not even adults. Furthermore, the sacrifices would spend at least a year in the capital of Tenochtitlan before sacrifice, and were healthy upon their deaths. This was mainly because the sacrifices themselves knew the purpose of their deaths and were more than willing to die for the greater good, some even volunteering. In fact, the sacrifices were treated as gods before the deaths by their captors and the general populace for their noble deaths. Now that we've gotten sacrificed, it's now time to do the ritual itself. Detailed in an advanced American Association for the Advancement of Science article, a non-profit organization dedicated to science, the ritual happens in the Aztec capital on Templo Mayor, the main religious temple in Tenochtitlan, where 2 temples at the top, one dedicated to Tlaloc, the rain god, and the other dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, exist. The sacrifice is brought up these steps by 5 other priests, and then held at the sacrifice slab at the top by the 4 other priests, while the 5th priest, with an obsidian dagger, cuts his abdomen open and pulls out his or her freshly beating heart, where it's placed in the right bowl in the right temple dedicated to the right god. The body, meanwhile, is pushed down the steps of Tenochtitlan to the base, where it would be brought to a separate room, with the head being decapitated flesh flayed from the skulls, holes drilled to the side, and the skull put on a zambantli, a massive skull rack at the front base of the temple. It is estimated that about 10,000 to 80,000 people are sacrificed each year in the Aztecs, though higher figures tended to be exaggerated from the Spaniards to justify the colonization. Skulls that are too old to be holding on to the zambantli, the massive skull rack, are converted into masks that the priests would wear for future Aztec rituals. And that is it in regards to our understanding of Aztec human sacrifice. Keep in mind that the Aztecs was a name that encompasses a wide variety of ethnic groups in Mesoamerica. As such, variations in the Aztec sacrifice exist, and we've only just discussed the Mixtec people's mythology, their way of getting sacrifices, and their way of performing the ritual. Other variations, such as the cult of Quetzalcoatl, exist, in which they would dedicate it to Quetzalcoatl, the god of light, and they would sacrifice animals instead of humans. And although the Aztec culture may seem archaic by today's standards, some aspects of the culture still carry on. For example, the aforementioned skull masks that I talked about is seen most notably in Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead in Mexico. I hope this has given you a better understanding of the Aztec culture and maybe even inspire you to pursue it, investigate it even further. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and I wish you all a good night day. Thank you.